Okay, so we're ready to go. Global Seller Solutions. We provide access to new markets. And one of the markets that we're going to talk about today is a very exciting market. New markets are very good for your business because it gives you more opportunities to expand existing brands and products, as well as look for new opportunities. And some of the benefits of expanding to new markets are that it can increase your revenue streams. You can have a new revenue stream. You can add business value, especially if you're planning to have an exit later on. Then obviously it's a lot. It adds a lot of value to your business, and reducing risk through diversification, not having all your eggs in one basket. So it's always good because anything can go wrong. All right, so let's talk about India. This is like the biggest opportunity right now. India is a very, very big country. Let's go into some facts and figures here. Some facts. It's the 7th largest country by size, but it's the 2nd largest country by population. So nearly 20% of the world lives in India. And India has over 50% of its population below the age of 25 and more than 65% below the age of 35. So by this year, actually, end of 2020, the average age of an Indian will be about 29 years. So if you're thinking of marketing products to India, then you might want to consider that and think about having that age group in mind. But of course, there will be people buying, who are part of all kinds of ages and demographics. But still, it's worth thinking about. You've got 1.2 to 1.3 billion people, $1.1 trillion retail market by 2022. It's an English-speaking market, and mobile data is very cheap in India. And currently there are 500 million phone users, and I think within 3 or 4 years it's going to go up to 800 million. And there are 627 million internet users right now, and it's growing. It's the fastest growing marketplace in the world, highly regulated and protected retail market. And so there's a lot lower outside competition, because you have to jump through a few hoops to get inside the Indian market. Amazon India has about 65% repeat customers. And Flipkart, which is another e-commerce marketplace, has been acquired by Walmart recently. And again, the e-commerce market right now is growing at 6 million new buyers per month. Let's look at some sales seasons. You've got on the left side the usual sales season that you can see in the US and Canada and the EU. So these are some of the usual ones. But in India, you've got some additional ones. So imagine if you could have Black Friday and Cyber Monday at different times of the year. So that would give you a lot more opportunities to sell. And one very interesting thing is that the main festive month in India is in October. So let's look at what happened in the last 3 years. So you can see in the left side, 2017, it was 1.3 USD in the first 5 days. Okay, so this is just the first 5 days of the sale period. So in 2018, it was 2.3 USD. So there was a growth of almost 80%. And in 2019, it was $3 billion in the first 5 or 6 days of the festive season. And in 2020, they're expecting that the figure will be close to $6 billion. So this is how fast it's growing and how big it is. What can expanding to the Indian marketplace do for your business? So we've sort of created this little chart. Again, this is purely representative of it's like a ratio between the marketplace population and the online buyers versus what could possibly be expected. So if you look at the Indian population, there is 1.33 billion with an online buying population of 425 million. Like I said, this is the current value. It's growing at 6 million per month. Now, if the annual revenue is 300K in the UK, and then the EU, and in the US it's 500k. So then we extrapolate those figures and go to India, it would be 800k in proportion. And with a modest profit of only 20%, you would have a profit margin of 160k. Now, important thing to remember is that this is 160k which you wouldn't have had otherwise if you hadn't launched in India. You could get 160k somewhere else, but it wouldn't be this 160k. Right, so what about your business value? Okay, your business value would, if it were to be 100% without India, then based on these proportionate ratios, you would be at 151%. So that's quite a big jump there, just adding this beautiful opportunity to your current business. Right, let's go on. All right, so why is India such a unique opportunity? Well, Amazon India and Flipkart e-commerce marketplaces are not allowed to sell their own products. And they're not allowed also to own more than 25% of any company that sells on their marketplace. There are multiple e-commerce marketplaces, which creates more competition and opportunities for buyers and sellers, right? So unlike other countries, Amazon cannot just dictate a monopoly, because there's so many different e-commerce marketplaces. And e-commerce is expected to reach 120 billion in 2020 and $200 billion by 2026. So this is growing very fast. Amazon India itself, let's talk about Amazon India. It has 100 million products and growing, hundreds of categories. There are 9 FBA facilities around the country with 33 delivery centers. Again, this is going to expand. And Amazon India, Amazon has been putting in a lot of money. They've pumped in already $5 billion in the last few years into India. And Amazon Prime is very cheap in India, only $14 annually. So now you can imagine the impact of that. That is like almost everybody can afford that. And Amazon Shipping currently covers around 90 to 97% of the postcodes in India. Costs of selling on Amazon India, 0 as far as professional plans are concerned. Of course, that might change in the future anytime. But right now it isn't. There's no cost to it. Lower referral fees, I'm going to show you that in a minute. And a lot lower cost of shipping, right? So here are some sample referral fees on Amazon India. That yellow URL, you can check it out yourself and see what category you're in and see what's relevant. So just to give you an example, like baby is 6%, office is 7%. Have a look, explore, you'll find it very interesting. Alright, so these are some of the other marketplaces besides Amazon India. There's Flipkart. As you know, it is 77% owned by Walmart. It currently has 44% of the market share, has 80 million products, 100,000 sellers, and 100 million buyers. Alright, there's Snapdeal, which is a smaller marketplace. Now, just to go back to Flipkart, they actually have their own fulfillment. Some of the other marketplaces are going to have to be fulfilled by merchant, but still, they're big, even though they're smaller than the big two, Amazon and Flipkart. So Snapdeal has 12 million products with 300,000 sellers. ShopClues, which is a much smaller e-com marketplace, it has 280,000 products with 600,000 sellers. eBay, of course, you need no introduction to that. And then there's Paytm Mall, which is actually a very interesting concept because Paytm is really a mobile wallet. So you can use that to pay, bills, utilities, make payments, taxis, all kinds of things. But they also have their own e-commerce marketplace, and it's a phone app. So you could buy anything, because you already have your preloaded mobile wallet, and you can just buy. And they have 120 million buyers, and through their app they have daily 2 million transactions. This is phenomenal. Of course, that doesn't mean that there are 2 million purchases of products, but still, that's how much there is, so much action going on. And then soon to come, JioMart, which is going to be a major disruptor. And this is going to be launched by India's biggest company, which is worth over $120 billion, the Reliance Group. And they are coming with a concept. It's an e-commerce, but it's online to offline sort of an integration. where they have thousands of stores around the country, and they will showcase products, and people can either go in and buy online, or they can just browse online and buy and get it at the store or whatever. But the advantage that JioMart has is that they have always been, the Reliance Group has always been a major disruptor. So they're going to give Amazon and Flipkart a run for their money. And they will have, because they're a fully Indian company, they can offer very steep discounts as well. So imagine, as a buyer, you have access to all these different e-commerce marketplaces, all within the same country. So if you could gain access to India, it would be absolutely fabulous. All right, so let's talk about some mindsets. So we actually recommend having a mindset called made for India rather than products made to market in India, which means there needs to be some customization, some understanding of cultural sensitivities, and just your whole presentation. I want to take you through a few stories of experiences of big brands, how they've learned some lessons. So let's go with KFC. They had a very disastrous first outing where KFC just thought they could just launch their products in India the same way they did in the US, but it was a flop because they didn't notice, or they didn't realize, that pork fat, which they were cooking the chicken in, was going to be offensive. And then there were a lot of protests about a lot of MSG being used in the food, and so they just got it wrong, really. They didn't look into what the market wanted, they didn't customize things, they didn't cater to the needs of the market. So they had to shut down. In fact, they needed police protection initially. But then they reinvented themselves and they came back very strong. And now there are 350 KFC outlets across India, and it's growing. So they just changed their approach, and then they became successful. Now McDonald's, around the same time, was sort of waiting in the wings, and they launched right after that. And they did a really good job because they customized and they localized their offerings. They added vegetarian options, as did KFC, by the way. KFC has also added a lot of vegetarian options because a lot of people in India are vegetarian. So McDonald's also got it right, and they also ditched the beef, because beef can be offensive to a lot of the Hindus because they don't eat beef, and of course pork as well. So chicken was the safest option, so they just majored on chicken. And this is called the Chicken Maharaja Mac, which is like the Big Mac, but it's just the Indian version of it. Maharaja means emperor. So this is very interesting. And then they've added potato patties and vegetarian options, so to cater, and also to a lot of Indian tastes. So they've got it right, and they're very successful. And then IKEA recently launched in India, and one of the things they did was they realized that they had to change the height of their kitchen counters because Indian women were not necessarily as tall as European women. So they had to lower the heights of these kitchen counters. So there has to be some thought put into it, what you're going to do and how you're going to position your products and brand to the Indian market. All right, let's go to another one. This is something that sometimes people have said, hey, you know what? I have never heard of any big sellers on Amazon India or Flipkart. So does that mean that there are no big sellers? No, that's not really true. One of the reasons that you might not hear this a lot is because of a mindset and a cultural issue. That is because a lot of Indians are Hindus, and they worship the goddess Lakshmi, who is the goddess of wealth, and it's considered rude and also not very good manners if you're bragging about your wealth, and also it would bring people to cast an evil eye, which is basically jealousy or envy, and then they'll wish you bad luck. So they don't want to broadcast that, and they don't want to talk about it. That's one of the reasons. And also, in addition to that, a lot of Indian families have a lot of relatives, so they want to keep it low-key because you don't want the relatives chasing after you for money, right? So they want to keep it low-key. Also, you have to develop cultural sensitivity and understand the culture a bit, because India is a very old culture and they're very proud of it. So you have to be sensitive. The brand French Connection UK, FC UK, they were not allowed to brand themselves as FC UK simply because it was an offensive and rude word, similar to another four-letter word. So they could come in as French Connection. These are just things to be careful of. Also, you got to spend a little time localizing. One of the things that is very popular is Hinglish, which is basically a combination of Hindi, the main language in India, one of the main languages in India, and English. So Domino's did this very effectively. They combined like a few words in Hindi and some words in English, and that's considered very cool and in. Credit cards in India. Okay, so this is a mindset thing again, and cultural thing, because people in India are normally taught to avoid debt, and owing other people money is a bad thing. So credit card adoption has generally been a lot slower, which is why credit card companies have been offering a lot of loyalty bonus points to people. But what does work in India is debit cards, a lot of mobile wallets like Paytm, and then there's of course cash on delivery, which is something that Flipkart and Amazon India have been doing. India is a challenging marketplace, right? There are complexities. You need to have a local entity. You have to set it up with regulatory compliance, and they're not easy. There's a very complicated tax structure with GST and tax deductible at source. I won't go into that because it's kind of complicated. And there are regulations to think about, which is foreign exchange. There's the Reserve Bank of India stipulations. There's data protection rights. And there's very strict compliance on legal, tax, and corporate. But you can overcome these with the right guidance. And that's where we come in at Global Seller Solutions, because we have the whole platform to help you with that. We have a model that meets all local government regulations. We ourselves are Amazon sellers, so we understand the pain of having to remotely manage your business in another country, all the things that you need. And we're setting up a whole ecosystem which is growing faster, and you will have access to that ecosystem. We also try to help you, guide you in every way to protect you and your interests. We take care of the legal, the corporate, the tax compliances, and all these different regulations. There are monthly compliances, quarterly and annual, and we take care of all of those things, right? Now, going back to India, it is really a huge opportunity. I don't know if you got excited about some of these numbers, and if you were surprised to see some of those figures, how big it is. And when opportunities come, sometimes they're like waves, like surfing. So you have a choice to just get in there and dive in and just start surfing, ride the wave. You can look at it as an entrepreneur or as a brand owner. Now, there's a difference, right? An entrepreneur will look at a new market or an opportunity and think of the possibilities and opportunities. But if you're, like, for example, if you're selling, let's say, ski equipment in a cold country, it's going really well, but now your brand is a ski brand, and suddenly you're faced with a market which is just beach and the sea and sand. You might feel like, hey, that's not an opportunity. But if you set aside that mindset that you're a ski brand owner, and you look at it as an opportunity, what can I do with these guys? Maybe I could do surfboards instead. So that mindset, you have to look at it like that. And what works in other countries may or may not work. But remember, you've got 20% of the world in that market. So what can you do with that opportunity, right? Don't limit yourself. Look at the ratio of number of sellers to the marketplace. Like Amazon USA has a population of 300. So sorry, in the USA, population is 330 million, and with 2 million sellers. That's quite a lot. Amazon UK and the EU is 513 million with 3 to 4 million sellers. Amazon India has 1.33 billion and only has 600,000 sellers. So can you see there's an opportunity there? And of course, it's not just Amazon India, as I mentioned earlier. There are all these other marketplaces that you can look at once you're in. So it's a huge opportunity, guys. I cannot stress this. And just like in the US, if you look at what happened at the time, like 10, 15 years ago, when e-commerce was just getting started. People who got in at that time, they are really killing it. But now the market is a lot more mature, and there's a lot more competition. So India is kind of like at that level, where it was 10-15 years ago in the US. So people who get in now are going to be absolutely way ahead. We just spoke to somebody recently, a couple of days ago. They wanted to be very low key, but they're doing over a couple of $1 million a year with 40% margins in India. So there is a lot of opportunity there. So you have a chance to just stand there on the beach, looking at the guys who are having the action, the part of the action, or you can be getting ready with your surfboard to jump in. If it's not your time yet, that's fine. This is not for everybody. It's for mature sellers, people who have already got experience and successfully doing e-com marketing in various marketplaces. But hey, if this is for you, then come on board. We'd be very happy to have you along for a very long ride. This is the long game. You're there for the long haul, and we're looking at the next 20 to 30 years of growth. It's not going anywhere. It's just getting started, guys. Okay? And thank you very much. I really enjoyed talking to you. If you have any questions, just get in touch with us here, hello@globalsellersolutions.com, and we would love to hear from you. Thanks so much. Take care. Bye.